part 1 of our in-depth review of Silent Night, Deadly Night, 1984, the classic. Great horror feel throughout. You gotta love the gore. It's so sadistic. This was condemned by the parents and the moms and the freaking teachers out there.
Yeah, it came out same week as Nightmare on Elm Street, November 9th, 1984.
So Siskel and Ebert, of course, jumped on the hypocrisy, morally correct bandwagon. We're like,
they're Hollywood critics. They're paid to say everything that's politically correct. So of course they were condemning this movie.
So they actually ended up taking this out of theaters shortly after they released it. It was released on It was released on the same weekend of Nightmare on Elm Street, like we were saying.
It was all the moms picketing outside the theaters, saying, you know, oh, this isn't a good movie for.
Hey, we're Siskel and Ebert. We're not egotistical. We're morally correct. Listen to us.
It's not a good movie to be in the theaters.
It's all
around
propaganda.
Christmas. I think it's okay.
So, and even in the trailer, it's like it outraged Hollywood and frightened the government. Oh my God!
That's just a total line, though.
I love the freaking gore and the feel throughout this movie.
Yeah, they did a lot of good 80s shots.
It's so freaking
throughout
sadistic.
The movie.
Alright, we're gonna jump in. Start with scene 1. Break down all the scenes. Death scene. This is for fans.
This is L-Mid
Talk about all the spoilers, of course.
JBM.
It's not like they show this movie on TV, but you can be seeing on YouTube. So check it out, then listen to this in-depth review. Alright, so it shows the title.
On YouTube and they go legit.
And they show the tits.
Wow.
And it shows the title with the wreath, and it's like the blood splatter of Silent Night, and then it goes to the blood splatter of Deadly Night. I love those opening credits.
It's pretty
I've only
tight.
seen parts of this movie back in like 01, 02.
The score of this
then
movie,
I finally saw it.
The score of this movie is
full
awesome
length
too.
Tonight.
With the dark piano beats.
Oh yeah, the theme playing.
So it goes the filler credits in the beginning.
And it's black and white credits for filler. This movie doesn't even fill up 90 minutes. It's only 75
and
minutes.
then it's like Christmas Eve.
We didn't get to see the uncut version, or maybe it was, but maybe it was, but it still showed the tits, and the gore is pretty good.
So 1971.
Christmas Eve, 1971.
And it's like the car driving. It's pretty tight shots.
40th anniversary
of like, you know, the mountains.
If you're watching this on Christmas Eve night, 2011.
And it's like the family driving with the little boy.
'Twas the night before Christmas, and their white lives were perfect. And they're like driving to the grandpa and with the mountain range.
Santa. The little boy's asking about Santa on the way to the mental asylum to see the wife's dad.
At the insane.
Because he's mentally insane.
And they arrive at the Utah Mental Institute, and then Grandpa's like, you know what happens
they all
what
leave
happens
the room
on Christmas Eve?
They leave the little boy outside.
And they're like, oh, he's a mere
grandpa.
vegetable.
And then the vegetable grandpa starts talking to the little boy like.
And he's like, all the naughty ones, Santa punishes. And of course there's other lines, but L-Mid's retarded.
Nah, and he's like, Christmas is the scariest time of the year. He's like, if I was you, I'd be scared. He's talking to a little boy.
Yeah, then Grandpa like, converts back to a mute vegetable when
like,
the parents come back.
Kids get punished.
Oh.
They get punished. That's what happens. That's the other things that Santa does. And the kid's like, okay.
And then on the infamous drive home, he's just like, Mom, have you ever been naughty?
And she's like, once or twice. Ah.
And you're like, oh man, I don't want to picture that.
Great, I don't want to picture that exactly.
And then Santa suit guy. Then it's the infamous Santa suit guy robs the liquor store.
Yeah, it's like an Arab Santa.
And he kills him over $31. That shit happens like every night in this world.
In Detroit.
This world's like halfway to hell. They didn't even have any minorities in this movie from what I remember. Like, there was like no black people. They could have made like this guy black.
Yeah, what's up with that? There's no black people. It was 1984. They were all too busy hustling.
I just love this scene. Then the family stops for the Santa because that guy, his car breaks down the road. And it's so crazy.
Yeah, the family pulls
scary.
over.
It's scary.
And they're like, oh,
scare
it's
the
Santa.
shit out of you if you're a kid.
They're like, oh, it's Santa. He just needs help. And the little boy's like, no. And then freaking, he comes up to the window and he's just like, oh yeah, nothing's really wrong. And then he just whips out the handgun.
He shoots the dad. The dad ends up doing an
The mom runs out.
This is like,
pulls off her
dude,
blouse.
this is another reason why I love this. It's like a half exploitation movie, half like 80s horror feel. So it's like half 70s, half 80s. It's like the perfect combination.
So then the little boy looks over and sees Santa. He whips out a knife and Santa slits the wife.
Exposes his mom's breast.
Slits the wife's
and he slits her throat, so like he's dead. Ghostface.
And if you're like a little boy watching this, you're thinking, oh my goodness.
Exactly. No wonder why they don't show this shit on TV.
Because you'd be scared like a little boy.
And then it cuts to December 1974, 3 years later. Billy's in the orphanage.
Oh yeah. So he goes to the orphanage.
He's halfway to Damien. And he shows signs of being Damien.
From The Omen.
Oh my god, they just beat it into your brains at this whole like 20-minute segment of where he's like having traumatized, and of course he'd be traumatized, especially around Christmas time, and he draws Santa like killing a reindeer.
He's got the suppressed memories.
And
so
he gets scolded by the nuns.
The nuns like, oh, he's still drawing pictures of Santa, and it's like a picture of like a Rudolph too. Like
of course, the elder nun is like, oh, that's all a bunch of mumbo jumbo nonsense.
She's like, he'll forget all this.
And the nuns start talking about his suppressed memories.
Oh yeah, she's like, when Christmas comes around, he'll sit on his lap, watch.
And then Billy.
On Santa's lap.
Okay, and then it goes to filler, then Billy watches a sex scene for absolutely no reason through a keyhole. And it reminds him of his mom's, like, and he sees the bitch's tits, and it reminds him of his mom's, like, getting killed.
So, fast forward that scene.
And then the nun shows up to give him, like, a licking.
She's like, hey, you're not supposed to leave your room, even though the other nun said for him to come out.
Then the elder nun talks to Billy, and she's like...
That happened like all the time when you were a kid. Some whack like that where it wasn't even your fault and you always got in trouble.
They thought they could do it without being caught.
Wow.
He's like, truth is, you can never be caught. And of course, read your fucking lines before I punch you in the fucking face. Exactly.
So she's like, yeah, when you do something wrong, you always are caught.
Momo.
That's what she's saying to little Damien before he's fully possessed.
Yeah, and he gets spanked for leaving his room. Then at night he's having nightmares of the murders, of course. They treat that for filler. Yeah, they're like, that's a good filler.
I'm sure that couple would be doing it at that school when it's like the recess time.
Even though it's like all nuns at the orphanage, it was like... It was just like some exploitation actor dude, like in the 70s.
It was just such a movie scene. There you go.
And they don't even move when she shows up. They're just like expecting like the older nun to like leave or something. They just like stay in the camera frame. Anyway, the nuns end up tying like Damien to the bed, Billy
because it goes to the bedpost, and he's like having flashbacks in his dreams, so he's screaming out. And then he runs out the hallway, and then they stop him.
They tie him up like it's the 1930s or something.
Like, yeah, everyone go to bed.
And then it's like Xmas morning.
He's tied up still, and then he gets untied.
Oh, and it's like all the orphanage kids who've had like, it's all the bastard childs who've had like a shitty life, and like the older nuns just like, I see nothing. She's like, I see nothing but greed. Yeah, they're all opening presents. She's like, I see nothing but greed, but there should be gratitude.
Because they're all opening presents. Pretty funny scene.
Looking at the orphanage kids getting gifts.
Yeah. And she's like, I see nothing but greed.
You're like, unbelievable.
You're like
the Catholic religion, the biggest cult in the world.
Wow.
And then Billy sits on Santa's lap,
so then it cuts right from there, to Billy on Santa's lap, and he's flipping out, and then he punches Santa in the nose. And Santa's got like a bloody nose, and he's like, what the hell is wrong with that kid?
I know, they just beat it in your brain. See what I'm talking about?
Like, hey, because it's like still stuck in the 80s, stuck in the 70s, stuck in the, where they gotta egg it on, like, hey, he's psychotic around Christmas.
So anyway, it cuts to spring 1984, 10 years later. and he's huge. He's a huge meathead now.
Oh yeah, he's like a buff.
He's like Damien on steroids.
Oh, it cuts to freaking the nun at the toy store.
She gets him a job at the toy store, script convenience.
She's like, yeah, and he's like, I don't need any kids from the orphanage. And she's like, no, he's not a kid. And here he is, here's Billy. And the camera goes up to him, pans up, and he's a total, he's a total buff meathead.
And then it cuts to like music filler, a good scene, like, hey, he's a good worker. He's a good worker, but around Christmas he's psychotic.
It goes to the montage of like, you know, like for the next couple months going by, like, hey, 80s style, and he's working, like doing real good, lifting boxes and everything.
He's a good hard worker. He only goes psychotic around Christmas time, the busiest time of year for
and then it shows the boss like pouring like some Elky, and he's like, hey, you want some? You know, you're cool now, working here. And then he's like, nah, man, I got a milk carton. He like holds it up.
Oh wow.
It seems hilarious.
Wow. Speaking of, L-Mid's got his eggnog mixed with milk mixed with cheap vodka right now. And he's still terrible in this review.
That's not true.
Alright, so we're going to go to part 2.
Don't believe everything you hear.
We're going to go to part 2. Hold up, there's a bunch of 80s toys of like Jabba the Hutt that they show.
Finish off with the 80s montage of him working his ass off for nothing. For $5 an hour.
Alright.